Good evening, my children. Many of my children we have one. Only one? Sexy Archie. Once again. I may just delay my visit to you by a few days, because you have proven most brave indeed. I guess there are no other brave souls this evening, so it's just you and me. Well, there is something to be said for intimate, personal sessions like this. Let's make the most of it, shall we? Let us begin. Tonight's first tale of terror is entitled The Phantom Redhead of the Old Parish Jail. During the 1880s, New Orleans newspapers reported peculiar goings-on said to be taking place within the walls of the Old Parish prison. Rumor had it that the place was haunted by a beautiful phantom redhead, said to have been seeing things that his underlings wished they could have seen too, judging by his description. Unfortunately, the situation got uncomfortably out of hand. One of the cells, number 17 to be exact, became the scene of the beautiful ghost's nightly appearances. The trouble was that she so terrified the prisoners, many of them attempted to commit suicide. Several succeeded. Most baffling was that whenever screams issued from cell 17, when the guards got there, the door was always open, whether the inmate was dead or alive. So many prisoners occupying the cells had either killed themselves or gone mad. The authorities decided to close it permanently. This did not put an end to the nocturnal visitations of the Phantom Redhead. She merely transferred her affections to a different cell. In that cell, in 1881, 6 women tried to commit suicide. In each instance, the prisoner was found to be nearly insane with terror. Furthermore, every woman told virtually the same story. That a woman with red hair had come through the door, bent over, and whispered horrible threats, laughing all the while, and finally glided noiselessly out of the cell again, this time through the wall. As usual, after every one of these tragedies, the cell door was unexplainably unlocked, sometimes even ajar. Sometimes the ghost appeared to be in a better frame of mind. Occasionally, groups of prisoners would appear in the warden's office at odd hours, asking incredulously if they could really leave. Always, they told the same story. A smiling redhead had come to their cells, unlocked their doors with a key that she carried, and led them to the stairway. But before they could thank her for setting them free, she invariably disappeared. Despite occasional respites from the tragedy, the prison continued to have the highest suicide rate in all of New Orleans. An unpleasant statistic which made it equally unpopular with felons and police alike. There had been a time, however, when the place was not haunted. One day, when the prison was new, it took in a beautiful, flashing dark eyes, and a beguiling air men found difficult to resist. Shortly after being locked in cell 17, she attracted the attention of a police captain. Before long, he began taking her out for evening walks, handcuffed, of course, to discourage her getting away from him. One evening, after they had become better acquainted, they went to a secluded rendezvous on Rampart Street for a private supper. No one knows what happened, but when the captain regained consciousness, his keys, gun, and handcuffs were gone. Back at the prison, the turnkey was found beaten to death. All the cell doors were open, and the inmates all gone. The red-headed woman managed to remain free for only a week. She was recaptured and thrust once again into cell 17. This time she knew she could not expect the liberties she had had before. She had humiliated the captain and become an accessory to murder. The guards did not know that she had hidden a long hat pin in a chink in the cell wall. As soon as it grew dark, and held the point between two ribs over her upper abdomen, then cast herself against the wall with all her might. When they found her in the morning, she lay stiffly on the cell floor, the head of the long pin protruding from her heart. She was the very first prisoner ever to commit suicide in number 17. The end. Did you enjoy that story, my children? Did it send chills up your spine? Excellent. Would you like one more story before we depart this evening? Very well. Our second story this evening is entitled The Tragic Ghost of Cambridge University. For nearly 100 years, students at Christ's College of Cambridge University have lived with the unhappy ghost of a man who was once one of them. His name was Christopher Round, and though he does not appear very often, he is seen occasionally on summer nights, walking slowly in Fellows Gardens to the end of the great lawn. So many have described him that there is no mistaking the solitary figure when it appears, usually when the moon is full. A tall, elderly man dressed in black, with swallowtail coat and high collar and cravat, with his head down and his hands folded behind his back. He always stops suddenly by the same great yew tree sometimes raising his head, sometimes not. Then he disappears from view among the thick foliage. Once in a while he is seen, a ponderous, slow tread can be heard climbing the stairs to the first floor of the building where Round lived during his lifetime, after which the door to his old room opens and closes. Although the ghost of Christopher Round began to appear shortly after his death, his tragic story did not become known until 50 years later. 2 years before he died, he wrote it all down and left it with his only friend, with instructions to keep it sealed until a half-century after the day of his death. The story began during Round's undergraduate days at Cambridge. At that time, he knew another student named Philip Collier. Collier was Round's opposite in every way, being light-hearted, outgoing, and full of zest for life. Furthermore, despite his many activities, Collier was a superb scholar. Somehow, whenever their paths crossed during their undergraduate years, and they did many times, poor Christopher Round always came out second best to Philip Collier. No matter what the competition was, scholarship, prize, honorarium, Collier won, and Round trailed behind. Only once did Round not lose to Collier. It was in a competition where they tied for first place. The two men were never unfriendly, but over the years their rivalry continued, where they eventually both were awarded fellowships at Christ's College, Cambridge. It was sometime after Collier also became a fellow that the truly tragic phase of their relationship began. Round had fallen in love with a lovely young widow, Lady Mary Clifford, during a period in which he had assisted her with some papers of her late husband that were being readied for publication. Convinced that she returned his feelings of affection, he determined to ask her to marry him. Before he had the chance, however, she announced plans to take a 6-month holiday to Italy. Under the circumstances, Christopher Round could do nothing but wait until she returned. Imagine his dismay when shortly after she came back, Lady Clifford casually mentioned that she had met Philip Collier in Italy. As matters turned out, Round was once again beaten out by his arch-rival. It soon became apparent to everyone who knew them that Mary Clifford and Philip Collier were sweethearts. Shortly afterward, while still reeling from the blows dealt him by an unkind fate, Christopher Round had occasion one evening to visit Collier in his rooms. To Round's dismay, he found Collier in what appeared to be a sickening state of drunkenness. This only drove Round into a deeper state of frustration and despair. He began taking long, nightly, solitary walks in the gardens. One evening, not long after he had discovered Collier so intoxicated in his rooms, Round was taking his customary nocturnal stroll when he heard a noise. Rushing to the direction from which it came, he stopped dead in his tracks at the sight of Philip Collier, staggering drunkenly along the bank of the swimming pond. As he stood watching him, Collier lost his footing and fell in. Although an excellent swimmer when sober, Collier now struggled feebly in the water, flailing about and splashing helplessly. Rushing to the bank, Christopher Round suddenly caught sight of a long pole with an iron hook on the end, unusually used for propelling or catching things in the water. In that instant, something came over him, a feeling he had never known in his life. Seizing the pole, at first intending to rescue the struggling man, Round stopped and held back. Why should I help him, he wondered. And dropping the pole, even as he had stretched it out, Round saw Collier sink beneath the water as the hook struck him in the temple. Of course, no one suspected a thing, but the coroner's jury that investigated Collier's drowning rendered a verdict of accidental death. And that was the end of it. Almost. It was revealed later that Collier had never been a drunkard at all. He had been participating in secret experiments with a new anesthetic, in which he had overcome with remorse. Christopher Round retreated into scholarship, refusing all advancements, shunning the company of others, and bearing his guilt alone. Then 2 years before his death, he wrote the confession that was to be made public 50 years later. And now, despite the passage of time, his tortured ghost still walks the gardens of Christ's College, perhaps in futile hope of undoing a wrong that can never be righted. The end. Did you like that story? Alas, the tale of poor Christopher Round. Does his soul rest in peace? I suppose I would know. But there are some things not meant for mortals to understand. Until next time, my children, thank you for joining us. I'll see you again tomorrow night. I'm here every night until Halloween, 9 p.m. Pacific Time, midnight Eastern Time. Come and join us, will you? Right here on Stickum.com. Until next time, my children, good night and pleasant nightmares.